My name is Barry Murphy and I'm a Senior Audit Inspector in IAASA's Audit Quality Unit. And I'm here today to present the annual update on behalf of IAASA of the work carried out by AQU over the past 12 months. But before I do that, we have another Slido question for everyone in the room and for everybody watching at home. So it's in relation to reporting timelines. So have reporting timelines changed as a result of sustainability reporting requirements, or do you foresee any delays in reporting timelines as a result of sustainability reporting disclosures? So if you want to have a think about that over the next couple of minutes, and we'll be giving the results a little bit later on in this regulatory update session. But I'll be speaking a little bit about the activities of AQU over the past 12 months. I'll touch on the current makeup of the PI population within the audit sector. I'll present the results of the 2023 audit file inspections. Arising from these inspections, I'll go through the main recommendations and findings we made. I'll speak a bit about our priorities for 2024. And finally, a very topical issue, obviously, I'll be speaking about how AQU will be addressing our responsibility to inspect the sustainability assurance engagements for public interest entities. After that, I'll be handing over to my colleague Maurice Barrett from IAASA's Corporate Reporting Unit. Maurice will be giving an update on some of the topical reporting issues that CRISU have identified. He'll be speaking about the 2024 observations document that CRISU have issued. And also he'll be talking about the common enforcement priorities that ESMA have set for 2024. So 2023, in March of this year, we published the quality assurance review reports in relation to the 2023 inspections. So this was the 6th round of audit inspections that IAASA carried out amongst PI audit firms, and the 5th year in which the reports have been made public. So there's been no change to the population of audit firms within our remit, which still stands at 7. Our audit inspection approach and the file inspection still follows a risk-based approach. So we have an internally generated risk model for selecting files, and we also take into consideration anything brought to our attention by our corporate reporting colleagues. We continue to operate inspections on a hybrid approach, so a mixture of off-site and on-site for both the firm-wide and the audit-wide inspections, with the exception of the PCAOB joint inspections, which are entirely on-site. We're working our way through a 3-year cycle of ISQM1 areas. So this is in relation to the firm's systems of quality management. So over a 3-year cycle, we plan to cover all elements of ISQM1. In 2024, we've been focused on ethical requirements, acceptance and continuance, resources, including staff and partner evaluation, and engagement quality reviews. And throughout the year, we've attempted to maintain our engagement with audit committees. So this has taken the form of interviews that we conduct with audit committee chairs for a sample of PI audit inspections that we carry out throughout the year. And earlier on this year, we also wrote to a number of audit committees to make them aware of the CSRD requirements for the entities that are in scope for next year, the impact that this may have on the resource requirements for both the entities and their assurance providers, and the impact that this could have on reporting timelines. So moving on now to the PI population in Ireland, and the number of PIs continues on a downward trajectory. It's fallen from 544 to 523 in 2023. What is interesting is for the first time since 2016, one of the groups within the population has actually increased. So debt listings saw a small rise during the year. All the other groups, though, continue to fall. There's been a levelling off in that fall in general, with the exception of the funds grouping, which has seen around a 20% drop over the past 12 months. And this slide sets out the results of the 2023 IAASA audit inspections, the results of which were published in March this year. So there were 31 audit files inspected in total. And And we've also included on this slide the results from 2020 to 2022 for comparative sakes. So 77% of audits inspected were graded either a 1 or a 2, meaning that we concluded they were either of a good standard or only limited improvement was required. This number is down slightly from 89% in 2022. For the 23% of audits that were graded a 3, there were more significant improvements required to the audit evidence on the file. And again, in 2023, as had been the case of the previous 2 years, we had no grade 4 audit files. So moving on now to the findings themselves, and this slide sets out the auditing standards that have informed the findings and the recommendations. So 2023 in blue, and then for a comparison, 2022 in green. So the 3 most significant areas for findings by IAASA was IAASA 700, so forming an opinion and reporting on financial statements, IAASA 550 in relation to related party transactions, and IAASA 240, so the auditor's responsibility relating to fraud. So in respect of IAASA 700, the findings mainly related to issues with financial statement review, the use in some instances of incorrect disclosure checklists, issues with incorrect answers being given to disclosure checklist questions. We also continue to observe issues with the sufficiency of audit work and the evidence or lack thereof on the audit file in relation to certain material disclosures. So this included inaccurate related party disclosures, a failure to disclose significant judgments in the financial statements, and insufficient procedures performed on cash flow statements. Regarding the IAASA 550 findings, there were certain issues with the related party disclosures documented, or rather disclosed, in the financial statements of the PIs we inspected. There were a number of findings in relation to the engagement team's evaluation of management's assertion that a related party transaction had been conducted at an arm's length basis, and also findings in relation to a failure to evidence on the audit file, an understanding of the controls management has in place for identifying related party transactions. And then moving on to IAASA 240, we identified instances where there was insufficient evidence of fraud discussions having taken place amongst the engagement team, a lack of evidence on the audit file to set out what specifically had been discussed, instances of listed procedures being communicated to those charged with governance that weren't sufficiently evidenced on the audit file, and a lack of evidence on the audit file in relation to gaining an understanding of management's assessment of fraud risk. So that's in relation to the file inspections. We also continue to review the firm's system of quality management, and the 2023 reports set out a number of findings we had at a firm-wide level. So we raised issues in relation to required ISQM1 quality objectives not being directly mapped to a firm's system of quality management, and instances where quality responses to the quality risks identified were not sufficiently tailored to the specificities of the firm. So my final slide this morning before I hand over to Maris is in relation to CSRD. So IAASA is the designated authority for inspecting the assurance engagements of sustainability reporting for PIs. We plan to begin our inspections around Q2 of next year. And we're currently engaging with firms in a couple of different ways. So we've been holding monthly roundtable meetings with the PI firms to discuss sustainability matters, to discuss some of the legislation and some of the challenges in implementing all of the requirements. We're also currently reviewing the firm's methodologies in relation to CSRD, which we'll be completing before we begin the file inspections next year. And we're hoping this will make the file reviews more efficient if we have a baseline knowledge of the firm's methodologies before we begin those. It's also a useful opportunity to hopefully make a positive impact to assurance quality by giving feedback on an informal basis to the firms. So outside of our usual findings and inspection reports, this is a way of having a useful dialogue with the firms before we start the actual inspections themselves. So during our inspections, we will be assessing compliance with legislation, the relevant assurance standard, which in Ireland is IAASA 3000, which was adopted in September this year, and also the firm's own methodologies. So initially, assurance is going to be provided on a limited assurance basis. But similar to an audit, limited assurance will still require the assurance teams to gain an understanding of the entity and also to assess areas where material misstatements could occur. We will also be assessing whether the procedures designed by the assurance teams sufficiently take into consideration the knowledge they obtained when obtaining an understanding of the entity and the relevant risks. And there's also a requirement within IAASA 3000 for the assurance providers to modify their approach and to design new procedures depending on how the assurance engagement is unfolding. So if they, for example, see any inconsistencies between responses given by management and what's actually disclosed, if they see evidence of inconsistencies between what's documented or what's disclosed in the financial statements and what's disclosed in the sustainability report, or any other matters that come to their attention that could lead them to conclude there's a risk of material misstatement, they're required to perform additional procedures. So this last point is similar to the professional skepticism principle that all auditors will be well familiar with at this stage. And just a final point, the assurance of sustainability reporting for non-PIs will fall to the relevant accountancy body. So that's all I had from an AQU perspective. I'll now hand over to my colleague Maurice Barrett, who will speak a little bit about corporate reporting.